Hey everyone, I'm going to do a live sort of screencast today. It's kind of not really going to be live because I want to make sure that my computer can handle recording, running a DAW and recording software for the screen capture and streaming at the same time. So what I'll do is I'll do it now and then I will stream it later on. Hopefully, if everything works according to plan. So big news as well. I'm stripping out the studio this weekend and we're having some building work done. So when it's rebuilt, when everything's back in place, we should have a much nicer environment for video shooting. And acoustically it's not going to change much, but there's a few nice little changes and we're going to repaint and everything. And yeah, cool, looking forward to that. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you about the Russell Cottier Mix Bundle today, which was released last week, and just show you some of the little bits of things that you can do in it, how I approach stuff, a little bit of a live demo. There are demos which are probably much better than what I'm going to do today. There are demos on the website for the product, which is mixbundles.com, and you can actually see the guys at Harrison doing the demos. And yeah, just hopefully this audio won't be too compressed. So if you're listening, if you're watching this and I sound a bit weird, there should be a button here somewhere that says HD. So make sure you're watching in HD. And as I say, I'm not going to stream this live, so there shouldn't be any glitches. Fingers crossed. Let's go over to the computer and have a little look at the Russell Cottier Mix Bundle. Hey, thanks for joining me. So I'm over at the computer. I'm looking at the Russell Cottier Mix Bundle today, which is a bundle. So a few months back, Harrison Consoles, the people who make those big mixing desks, and this DAW that we're looking at the moment. If you don't know about Harrison, go and check them out. Search Harrison Consoles. They made desks that have been used to make some huge records. In fact, the number one selling album of all time, Thriller, I believe, was made on a Harrison. A load of the Queen stuff was done on Harrison. So they asked me if I wanted to put together this bundle for you guys, which is the workstation, the digital audio workstation that we're looking at, and my favourite plugins. And I picked 4 plugins, which do things that are just mind-blowingly good. They're kind of not features that aren't really available anywhere else, so in other plugins, and they're not very natural sounding things. Actually, they're not things that you would normally do in hardware either. They're very clever, very innovative plugins to go with this kind of analog sounding DAW. Talking of the DAW, what do you get in Mixbus? Well, why would you use Mixbus? In fact, you could use it. You can actually pipe audio into it and use it like a summing mixer. You can pipe audio from your other DAW into it and just use it for the mixer. You could bounce out your multi-tracks and use it to mix. You could bounce out your stems and use it to sum the stems. And a lot of people do that. Or you could just use it for the whole thing because it's really powerful. It's really good. And there's lots of features in it and it's easy to use as well. Plus it looks kind of cool. So let me show you a couple of the differences that exist in Mixbus. There is a layered approach to... We have playlists, and you can click on the P button to get your playlists. But there is also this idea of... Let me go into grab mode here. There's also this idea of layers. And if I want to put this particular section of this region and play it back at that section, I can do that, and Mixbus will play the top layer at any one point. Now that's kind of cool because it means that you don't get those dropouts that you occasionally get when you're comping, and it's just a nice, fast, easy way of working, easy way of comping. I prefer it to work in the layers mode and just stay in a single playlist, but you can work in different playlists if you want. It's cross-platform. It works on Linux, it works on Windows, and it works on Mac. There is one feature that isn't available on Windows that I absolutely love, and I think that's something to do with the file architecture in Windows, but basically you can actually use this like a tape machine. You can have destructive recording, destructive editing. So you record over, say you want to patch in, punch in, you set your punch points and you actually record over a section. So it could be a nice way of working, especially if you're like a musician and you don't want to hassle of all this nonsense of dealing with extra regions and stuff. So that's kind of cool. Other cool things are that every region is given, let me zoom in here, every region is given a crossfade at the end of it, and that's automatic, so you never get those clicks and pops. So there's loads of cool things in the edit window. You can do fully fledged MIDI recording, editing, and so on. But let's look at the mixer window, because I could be here talking for hours if I don't move fast. The mixer window. Mixbus encourages the use of plugins, but it does not necessitate them. Everything you need to get a good mix going is built in. Probably bar, your reverbs or whatever. And let me just show you that. Let's go from the top to the bottom of a channel strip. At the top, we've got our input monitoring section. We have our input position, which could be, it could be any of the hardware inputs. It could be any other input from any other track or channel on the mixer that's set up. Crazy. You can even set up sends. That come out of any point and send them into inputs on other tracks. So, the routing is amazing. We've got a phase flip. Now, there's another video about polarity optimization, which is like an automated way of giving you suggestions about what kind of phase configuration you'd want for, say, a drum kit mic setup. But there's a phase button on the actual channel strip. Now, that doesn't exist on all DAWs, and it's really annoying that it doesn't exist. So moving down, we've got EQ, compression, and fader. And these are sort of modules that you can move around, so you can change the configuration of your channel strip on every channel. How cool is that? Now, that means you can EQ post compression if you want to. I tend to do that quite a lot, actually, because it means my threshold isn't changing. Or you can carve out the sound before you push it into the compressor. So these are all built in. These just stay in the channel strip. We've got an EQ, and just like on a normal mixing desk, if you roll over it and roll the, so I'm just grabbing a knob on my mixing desk, channel 26, high frequency. Same way, I just go over to the Harrison and I roll over. I move my mouse over the button and I just roll backwards and forwards, and it lets me control the knobs and automatically engages, or if the EQ is bypassed or the compressor is bypassed, it will give me it will turn it on for me. And if you watch the scribble strip here, that will tell us what frequency we're at and how much gain we've got. We've got sends, and these can be sort of used as group sends or auxiliary sends. So I'm sending, these guitars to the guitar group. We'll talk about that in a bit, the Mixbus. I could, if I wanted to, I could send, well, let's look at this track here. I'm sending some verb, some of the lead vocal to the reverb and the delay, and you can automate the amount. You can automate all these parameters. So what's next? Master, assign, and pan. So you can assign to these groups, or you can now pan will apply to the stereo mix buses, these things, or you can send directly to the master, or you can send to both, which is cool because you can have sort of parallel compression techniques on the go. You can create buses as well, just like you would in any DAW. So if you want another bus in this section, you can create it. It doesn't have to be these. And likewise, you can create sends. So you might go new external send, and you could send to, I don't know, a different destination, and that would create a send that sits in here, and you can move around where you want that send to be. You can even change. Oh, let me just click that properly. You can even change input and output selections on your plugins. So it's kind of cool. You can do this really flexible routing. You've got normal, mute and solo, input trim. We've got a compressor. And the compressor, let me just show you the compressor that I'm using at the moment on this track here. You see the gain reduction here. I'm using the leveler mode, but there's a compressor and limiter mode. And whichever compressor you've selected will change what this little knob is doing. So that's like, sensitive to the compression selection. Now, it doesn't mean you can't drop in compressors as plugins. If you've got all your compression plugins, you can drop them in. But you've always got this compressor here. And it's just really easy. You just grab it, move it, and they're really good. They're really good compressors, and the EQs are really good too. So, what happens when we send something to one of these groups? Well, it goes over to these 8 mix buses, or one of these 8 mix buses. As you name these, the names appear on the buttons. So obviously I've got some reverb and delay here, but I've also got my groups. So why is this cool? Well, you can drop plugins in on the group, you can EQ on the group, you can compress on the group, and you can change the order. But we've also got this little VU meter, and that VU meter displays the amount of clipping. So Harrison have got this idea that you want to emulate a kind of tape vibe, in that you want to emulate some of the transient clipping and that occurs when you record to tape, but without the issues of tape, without the maintenance, without the hiss, the high noise floor. So they've given us basically a transient clipper on each of these mix buses, and one on the master as well. So I'm going to play back some shells, which is just the pretty untreated kick, snare, and tom mics, and I'm just going to roll backwards and forwards this saturation control, and you'll hear that the very top high-pitched transients, particularly in the snare, start to vanish when I crank the knob forward. Why is this useful? Well, it's useful for not making you try and compress too much in a mix. It emulates a real-life analog workflow where you wouldn't, basically the transients would get cut off because the way you record drums on tape, and that's why tape drums sound so good. Well, this is kind of the best of both. So let's go. Let's have a listen. So as you can see, or you can hear from that, we can fatten up the drum sound. And when you apply this to all the content of your track, or a lot of the content of your track, you can create some really great sounding mixes without too much processing, and that's the key thing. Let's look at the master fader channel as well. You can make this pre or post processing, this master fader. Now, those of you who understand what that means will realise that that's kind of cool. We've got the area for the plugins. We've got the tone control, the 3-band EQ. We've got a phase correlation meter, very useful, and a K14 K meter. If you don't know what that is, look up Bobcat's KATZ digital domain K meter. This basically is a measure almost of dynamic range to some extent. It's not quite dynamic range, but it gives us an indication to make sure that our recordings are punchy. And when they're put on the radio and TV and played back in Spotify or iTunes or whatever in cars, they will still have that kind of punch. So we want to, we've got a target area here. You can change the calibration of this as well if you want for different types of music. There's another saturation area. We've got a look-ahead limiter, and the normal compressions and stuff. Automation, solo controls, outputs, direct outputs. What I didn't mention actually is that there's a sidechain compressor on these buses, and that can be fed from any of the tracks. You can widen the tracks by double clicking, and see this little arrow here that makes something send to the sidechain of the sidechain compressor on the buses. So it's nice. You can do normal sidechains anyway, but it's kind of cool. Kind of cool little tool. If you click Mon here, you get the monitor section, and just like on my physical hardware monitor section, it has all the controls that you would expect. There's mono, there's dim, there's mute. In fact, it's better. I don't have a mono button on my actual desk. And you can pop in your room correction plugins here if you use room correction, and you'll never have to worry about them printing to your output when you bounce your track. Oh, there's so much more. I could talk about the loudness analysis and spectral the clarity optimization and all the other editing tools and so on, but I haven't got time, and I would probably bore you stiff. So let's just have a look at the plugins. I have first up the Expander Gate, and I've got all my sort of favorite plugins in here, but you can add plugins with the plugin manager, just like a normal sort of setup. So the Expander Gate is a really powerful gate made by Harrison, and it does lots of cool things. And I'm just going to kind of show you it in action. If you don't know, when I start playing with the sidechain filter, just listen for when I pick the resonant frequency of the drum, and that basically lets the gate trigger off a filtered version of the track and avoids false triggering. I'm also going to look at the ratio here, and as I roll the ratio back, you'll hear more of the ghost notes are allowed through. So let's listen to the snare. So that's the sort of the gate in action. I'll show you the expander now. Notice that there's a look ahead as well. So we've got look ahead modes, which basically means that it's checking the sound. It's looking at the signal, so you can actually make sure the attack is on time rather than a little bit delayed after the transient. So here's an example of how the expander works, where we're allowing a bit more content through, and you could use this for not just for drums, for vocals, all sorts of things. Okay, so that's the gate. You've got your threshold. There's not much to say about it. I just wanted you guys to have a quality gate, a really good quality plugin that will, allow you to clean up your mixes and make sure, because that's one of the real important things, getting rid of stuff that isn't necessary. So next up, the drum character plugin. What is the drum character plugin? Well, I've done another video on it, but it basically splits up each drum hit into two sections, the attack and the tail. And you can EQ them separately. So let's just see. I'm just going to move it around and you can sort of see the things that you can do with it. Just listen for, basically, it's better than EQing, because if you want to crank the top end of a snare mic, you're going to get loads of spill being cranked up as well. You're going to get all the hi-hats being cranked up. But this doesn't happen with the drum character setting, the drum character plugin, because you can crank the attack. So it's only cranking up the very start and not cranking the high frequencies on this tail. And likewise, you can add more heft to the start. You can add more heft to the tail. So I'll show you a bit in the snare, and then I'll show you a bit in the kick. Bang up. So it really demonstrates how you can do a lot of really extreme processing with the drum character plugin. Let's just copy that over and have a little look at it in the kick. So here's the drum character with the in the kick. So basically, you can see that you can really chop up the drum into different. Think of the drum as an attack and a tail, and working it in different ways that way. Next up, bass character. Let's have a look at the bass character. So this is the bass character plugin. It's not an EQ. Well, it is an EQ, but it's an EQ that works based on frequencies. Here's the harmonics, I should say. Here's the fundamental. This line here. We can boost or cut that, or anything between that. Now, every time a bass note sounds, where the frequencies of these EQ nodes are, they change basically. So we're affecting harmonics of the note that's being played, not frequencies, as not a given fixed frequency. So I could put a bump here, when it hits I don't know, an E, which is 72 hertz, like a higher than the second octave E on a bass guitar, then it's going to that boost is going to be at 72. When it hits the A above that, it'll go to whatever the A above that is. I don't know. What would that be? 110. Would it be 110? Yeah, 110. So it's really kind of clever, and I'll just kind of show you some of the things you can do with it. So hopefully, depending on how this video is compressed, you should be able to hear that when I move that body across from here, you get like a nice hefty sub, and then it becomes more honky, and then we can add more or less clarity in the top. So I should say that this is a track from that is going to be used for my classic mixing course at recordedstudiomasterclass.com, and the artist is Rossa Murray. And massive thanks to him and the other musician who played on this, which Todd Sloan Fortune, who played bass on this, so it's kind of cool track. It was done really fast, but the simplicity and the of the recording really lends itself to demonstrations. So finally, finally, we've had vocal. Where am I? We've had the. Give me 2 seconds. Let me delete that plugin. It shouldn't be there. We've had the gate plugin. We've had the drum character plugin. We've had the bass character plugin. Now let's look at the vocal character plugin. So I'm just going to drop this in here. And again, I'm going to put it. I think I'll put it at the top. Yeah. And the vocal character plugin, again, it's very similar. It just looks at the sort of component frequencies within. We're looking at component harmonics within a given recording. So here's the track solo.
Gucci dress, looking at her very best. He had to stop and whisper to her, don't be a stranger, hey, when you go away. Away, away.
I think my screen recording software is kicking up a fuss here, so I'm just going to delete some plugins earlier on, just to lessen the CPU load. Okay, so let's just listen to the. As we watched that vocal, we could see the analysis of it, and we seem to get some humps on the second harmonic. So let's see what happens if we boost the super low body.
She drives a BMW, gift from the bank of daddy. Oh, she got 200 pairs of shoes. You gotta keep it classy. Oh, she's way too good for you. He lives a nice life like her, a banker down on Wall Street. Oh, he hasn't got too many cares. Made his money nice and early, but will it ever be enough? Tall heels, Gucci dress, looking at her very best. He had to stop and whisper to her, don't be a stranger, hey, when you go away. Away, away.
So hopefully with that very brief demonstration, you can see that I was able to boost different sort of component parts in the vocal. And it wasn't as if I was choosing a frequency to cut, and then when the note changed, that sort of cuts the frequencies. It was more about choosing the harmonics that I wanted to promote or hide. And that's a really cool way of thinking about mixing, because it's something that wasn't doable really in the old school hardware domain. So we're kind of marrying these futuristic, innovative plugins with a DAW that can be super clean if you want it to be clean, but can really offer some tasty analog vibes if that's what you want. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to sign off now, and yeah, if you want more information on Russell Cottier Mix Bundle and Mixbus, go over to mixbundles.com. And yeah, thanks for everyone who's watched. As you know, I wasn't streaming this live because of the workload on my computer. I didn't want it to interfere too much with the DSP. So I hopefully have been answering any of your questions below. If you've still got questions, just give me a beep, and yeah, we'll talk about it in more depth another time. All the individual plugins, but yeah, keep me posted, and I will see you soon. Happy recording. Thanks for watching.